Go, everyone. So we're about to start our program. Pennsylvania Democrats, can I have your attention? We're about to start our program in a moment. So, we do everything in decency and order. And we do care. We're in the process of selecting people that will run our country, people that will run our Commonwealth. And here in the place where democracy was born, where this country was born, right here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we start by honoring our country. So to lead us in the national anthem, my vice chair. No, I'm sorry, the Pledge of Allegiance. Lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, you could sing. I think you could do it, but she's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Peggy Groom.
Thank you. I did sing at the Winter Olympics in 1960 at Squaw Valley. Me and 2,000 other people. Anyway, as we say the words to the national anthem, please rise while I'm talking. I'm not the anthem, he's got me on national anthem, pardon me. The Pledge of Allegiance. Please think of the words. They are important. And what's really funny is to listen to the words that first graders say. I mean, it is hilarious. They come up with the strangest things that they think it says. But each of you, please take a moment and listen to the words you say tonight, because it's all on the line, every part of it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everywhere I go, I remind people that you need to have a plan to vote. I know this is a real fundamental thing, but this year you need to have a plan. My recommendation to the people in this room who are very knowledgeable is vote early. Because you don't know what's going to happen on that day. You could break an ankle, your mother could be in the hospital with something unexpected, you could have a baby if you're young enough, etc. So please vote early. Not often, but I wish we could. But I really, and familiarize yourself. In Dauphin County, our election board moved. So I had to go hunt and find it because I haven't had need to be there in the last couple of years. So make sure you know where it is so you can tell people where it is. And you can vote up to the day before election day at the election board. In fact, you actually could vote there that day if you think that there's going to be any kind of a problem because you requested the ballot, et cetera, it didn't come, or it was humid and the glue got stuck on the envelopes, or you can't remember whether you signed it correctly on the right envelope or you had the right date. So all of those reasons, you can go to the election board itself, stand right there at the desk, request it, they'll give you a form to do that, and take it over to the little kiosk, those little cardboard things that you put your head between. Anyway, and you can vote right on the spot. So make sure you have a contingency plan. And that goes for your neighbors, your children, if they're old enough to vote, and the people in the nursing home. You can't tell them how to vote, but you can certainly make sure that they do vote. So, friends, neighbors, countrymen, lend me your ears. Vote. Take care and peace to everybody. Thank you.
And now, if you'll rise again, Tommy Blackwell will lead us in the national anthem. Sorry about that, guys.
Thank you, Chairman. If you will, fellow Democrats, stand with me, please. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched was so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land and of the free and the home of the brave? Let's go get them.
Thank you. So now we're in Pennsylvania's third largest county, and I noticed she's just joined us in the room. Yeah. So I'm going to present to some, and I know bring to others a woman who is leading this county, which is leading the way to making sure that Democrats win. She is the chairwoman of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. She is a woman who is leading a county of 930,000 people, showing that women can get it done. They are getting it done in Montgomery County, and who better to greet us as we kick off this weekend where we're on the task to nominate and to elect the first woman president of the United States. I bring you the woman who leads our third largest county, Commissioner Chairwoman Jamila Winder.
Thank you. Hey, State Committee, how are you? Where are all my Monco Democrats? Let me see you. Are you up in the... Great. Well, listen, I won't be long, and thank you all for having me. This is an exciting time to be a Democrat, isn't it? It's an exciting time to be a Democrat. So for those that don't know me, I'm Jamila Winder. I'm proud to chair the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. And it's my honor to welcome you to my home county that I've called home for more than 4 decades, Montgomery County. Our county is not just a place. It's a key battleground that will determine the outcome of this election. Am I right? The road to victory runs through Pennsylvania, and we all know that when Monco shows up, we win. But let me be clear, Montgomery County is not just the only piece to this puzzle, right? The importance of every single county in Pennsylvania cannot be overstated. From Philadelphia, where's my crew from Philadelphia? To Erie, do we have Erie in the house? Okay. From the Lehigh Valley to the rural heartland, it's the hard work and dedication of committee members like all of you that will deliver us the victory that we need in November. Each county, each precinct, each neighborhood plays a critical role in helping get Vice President Kamala Harris over the finish line. We know that Kamala Harris understands what's at stake. She's been fighting for us every single day. And so we need to show up for her, am I right? So together as Democrats across Pennsylvania, we have the power to deliver this win. So let's stay focused, let's stay organized, and make sure that every county throughout this great state of Pennsylvania shows up for every Democrat on the ballot this November. So thank you for having me. Enjoy dinner.
Thank you. Well, folks, today we have a special treat. We have one of the most dynamic leaders in recent American history. He is a gentleman who serves in the United States Senate. representing the other Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He's a person who can talk to us about all the great accomplishments that this administration and the Democrats in Washington under the Biden-Harris administration have moved us forward with. He's a person who was there when Democrats were not just talking about doing something about immigration, but came up with a plan that was respectful of people's rights and would keep our border safe. He's a guy who was there when we passed the Inflation Reduction Act in a way that not only addressed issues like climate change, but addressed things like making sure that we brought back American manufacturing. He was there when this administration moved forward to pass the infrastructure bill, to make sure we have resources to do things like when 95 collapsed, Governor Shapiro would have the resources to get it open with union workforce in 12 days. He was there as the Democrats led in Washington, creating millions of additional jobs. And he is here to tell us all the great things that we can expect from 4 more years of Democratic leadership and a historic Kamala Harris presidency of the United States. I present to you none other than from the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Senator Ed Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, so much. Thank you for all that you are doing for Pennsylvania, for our nation. Thank all of you Pennsylvania Democrats for your great leadership. Really, it's just such an honor to be here with you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Senator Ed Markey. I am from Massachusetts. It's an honor for me to be in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Our nation's 2 great commonwealths, Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, have played the historical roles in forming this great place that we call the United States of America. The shot heard round the world came from my home district of Lexington and Concord, where the American Revolution began, and it was here where the American Revolution ended and our new United States began with the signing of the United States Constitution in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So our commonwealths know how to make history. It was in Valley Forge that then General George Washington took groups of disparate soldiers and volunteers during a bitterly cold winter and transformed them into an army for democracy here in the United States. And today, we are once again called upon to gather our resources and unite for the sake of our freedom and our liberty, but this time under the leadership of our new general for democracy, Kamala Harris. In the same way that George Washington was the founding father of our country, Kamala Harris is going to be the founding mother for all women to finally recognize that now they too can be president. So we can see that along with Tim Walz, Kamala Harris is a walking, talking, political antidepressant for our party and for our country. And every single day, she is giving us the leadership which we need. It is a fight that we must win, and I believe that we can win it. So that's in part due to the tremendous leadership from the Pennsylvania Democratic Party. My thanks to Chairman Street, to Vice Chair Peggy Grove for their efforts, and to Mitch Cates, who, like me, was born in the Malden Hospital in Malden, Massachusetts. So I know that he is genetically hardwired to guarantee that we have a Democratic victory this year. And to Speaker of the House, McClinton, thank you for all of your great leadership. And by some of the fantastic candidates that need our support on Election Day. Eugene D. Pasquale for Attorney General. They're coming after him, and you have to have his back, You have to make sure he gets all the support which you can give him. To Representative and candidate for Auditor General, Malcolm Kenyatta, and candidate for Treasurer, Erin McClellan. And I also see out here my great friend and former colleague, the great Marjorie Margolis Mezvinsky, who is here as well. It's so great to see you, Marjorie. So here we are. It's got to be all gas and no brakes for the next 31 days in order to get the vote out for all of these Democratic leaders. Only the paranoid survive. And that's who we have to be for the final 31 days. This is too close to call. And this is how the country has been. In 2000, Gore versus Bush was a tie broken by the Supreme Court. In 2016, Trump versus Hillary was a tie, but Hillary won the popular vote. In 2020, Trump versus Biden, it was a tie, but we eked out the victory in the key states to make Joe Biden and Kamala Harris the leaders of our country. And right now, across our country, it is a tie. And I agree with Tim Walz. We're behind by a field goal, but we've got the ball in the red zone with 31 days left to go. And the question is, are we going to push it into the end zone or not? For Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, that is going to be our challenge. So we're going to need every single person here tonight to use your voice, to use your vote in this historic fight for our rights, for our future, and for our democracy. This is the fight of our times, and we won't be able to win unless we have Bob Casey back in the United States Senate. We have to ensure that his partnership with John Fetterman continues, because fighting and winning is exactly what I have seen Bob Casey do in the United States Senate. From his insistent, persistent, consistent fight for our union brothers, sisters, and siblings to protect their pensions, defend their rights to organize and to bargain, and to strengthen their pay and their benefits, to his leadership fighting the opioid epidemic and authoring legislation to stop the flow of fentanyl across our border. When our veterans were exposed to toxic chemicals, they came to him, desperate for health care. He joined then to lead on passing the PACT Act so that veterans would get the help which they needed for the injuries which they had suffered in the name of our country. The veterans served us. Bob Casey made sure that we served them with all of the damage that had been done to them as they fought overseas. When workplaces were not accommodating the needs of pregnant women, he fought to pass the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act to make sure they got the protections and the accommodation they need. He got it done. When Pennsylvania needed his securing of billions in funding for transportation and infrastructure repairs, Bob and his partner, John Fetterman, worked with the entire Pennsylvania delegation. He got it done. Bob Casey gets things done. He is tough, battle-tested, and as effective a legislator who has ever served in the United States Senate. And as an Irishman from Massachusetts in the Senate, I can tell you this right now. There's no instance of an Irishman ever leaving the United States Senate voluntarily. So we got to help him to make sure that he stays there and that we protect him. So this is the moment. It's Bob Casey against McCormick. And on every one of the issues, there's one thing that separates Bob Casey from McCormick. Bob Casey is right and McCormick is wrong on every one of those issues. And you are going to have to go out there and make sure that all of this work gets done. So for those who don't know me, I'm from Malden, Massachusetts. The Cateses and the Markeys are from Malden, which is a blue-collar, working-class community of 65,000, 4 miles north of Boston. And those families had big dreams for their kids. My father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company. And I learned the values that I needed to learn from my mother and father as I watched them try to balance the budget at the kitchen table, the same table where my mother paid the monthly bills. My father worked very, very hard, but he did not get to realize all of his dreams. My mother was one of 5 daughters in an immigrant Irish family. And my grandmother died when my mother was 17, senior class president. Well, before FDR, there was no safety net. One of the girls had to stay home. So my mother just had to stay home to raise the younger girls in the family. That was the system before Democrats took over, to ensure that those protections, those opportunities would be there for everyone. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I was the first person in my family to go to law school. When I got elected to Congress at age 30, it was the first time I had ever visited Washington, D.C. to be sworn in as a United States congressman. I had never been there before. On my father's side, he grew up on the first floor of a triple-decker in Lawrence, which is the poorest city in Massachusetts, 5 brothers and sisters. I went up there to ring the doorbell when I ran for the Senate. My father's son is a senator. Out onto the porch came a Dominican family with their children. And the accents were different, but the aspirations the same for that family as they were for the Markey family. And that's what the Democratic Party is all about. It's to make sure that those families can maximize their God-given abilities. So they have access to the education, to the health care, to all of the same kind of non-discriminatory opportunities that we were given a chance to have take advantage of. And there's one thing I know: if you want to live like a Republican, you got to vote like a Democrat to give those opportunities to everyone. And most of us are in this room knowing that we got those opportunities. So that's really the challenge that we have in 2024. We need to make sure that everyone gets what they need. The richest 3 people in the United States right now have as much wealth as the bottom half of all Americans combined. Something has gone wrong in our country. A kindergarten teacher makes $50,000 a year. We have 1 million kindergarten teachers. Who contributed more to America last year? Those kindergarten teachers or the 3 billionaires? It's not even a question that needs to be answered. Creating fairness and justice, bringing costs down, growing our economy, protecting the fundamental rights that make democracy the greatest in the world. These are the generational challenges we face as Democrats and as Americans. That's what Biden-Harris administration has been all about. We passed the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law, the single largest investment in repairing and reconstructing our bridges, our roads, broadband for everyone in rural America, and do it with union jobs. The Biden-Harris administration has now created more than 16 million new jobs, including another 250,000 today that just got announced. We increased small business loans by 45%, especially to minority businesses. We lowered the price of insulin to just $35 a month. We ensured that the first over-the-counter birth control pills hit the American stores this year, and we finally made lynching a federal crime in the United States under the leadership of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We appointed the first black woman, Ketanji Brown Jackson, to the United States Supreme Court. And we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, otherwise known as the single greatest investment in clean energy in our nation's history, with half of the funding having to go to black and brown and disadvantaged communities that have lived in environmental sacrifice zones throughout their entire life. And Kamala Harris cast a tie-breaking vote to unleash that $1 trillion that's going to revolutionize communities all across the country. And do you know who joined me to launch the National Climate Bank to unleash clean energy and invest $27 billion in black, brown, tribal, indigenous, and vulnerable environmental justice communities? Kamala Harris. Do you know who was my co-partner in authoring the bill that ultimately became the law that made Juneteenth a national holiday? Kamala Harris. Do you know who secured $20 billion for homeowners during the foreclosure crisis? Do you know who prosecuted and collected billions of dollars from corporation polluters? Do you know who was the first woman, the first Asian woman, the first African-American woman to be the vice president in the history of the United States? Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, history maker, history maker, history maker. And she is going to make history again on Election Day. There is no one better to prosecute the case against the felon Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. And where have the Republicans been during all of this, during this fight for our economy and our democracy? They've been in the greatest witness protection program in the history of the United States. They haven't been seen, they haven't been heard from. They've done nothing to help our families and workers, and they've ignored the very real and very dangerous threats to our democracy from their very own party. They've blocked legislation to protect voting rights. They've blocked legislation to guarantee the right to an abortion. They've blocked my legislation that guarantees the right to contraception, to birth control for everyone. They've blocked legislation to address our broken immigration system because Trump would rather demonize than compromise to get solutions on the immigration issue. He should be ashamed of himself, but he knows no shame. They've blocked legislation to lower drug prices. They've made GOP stand for Got Our Protections. Instead, Speaker Mike Johnson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, J.D. Vance, and their red tie-wearing Republicans have been standing shoulder to shoulder, showing fealty to a now convicted felon. In fact, J.D. Vance has had to change his positions more times than Donald Trump has been convicted. That's how absolutely in a pretzel he has been twisted. But that's the GOP's political paradox. Republicans hate government, but they have to run for office to make sure that it does not work. And now they told us how they are going to do it. While Kamala Harris was leading the vanguard on reproductive freedom and abortion rights and representing our country at the highest level of negotiations around the world, the far-right Heritage Foundation Billionaire Boys Club released Project 2025, their hateful, racist, homophobic, misogynistic roadmap for a fascist, extremist, MAGA-fueled future. They don't want to make America great again. They want to make America hate again. That is their agenda for this country. Project 2025, access to contraception, gone. Protections against discrimination, gone. Labor protections, gone. Affirmative action, gone. And just last spring, Trump told the billionaire oil and gas guys that if they gave him $1 billion, he would take all of the wind and solar, all electric vehicle, battery storage technology, all of those clean technologies that are creating new manufacturing jobs in our country off the books. That's not what Kamala is saying about fracking. That's what, however, Trump is saying about the other energy sources that the Democrats have been promoting. So those tax credits that the chairman mentioned are the tax credits of the future. We have so many young people here this evening. That's what they want us fighting on climate change, to make sure what we just saw in North Carolina doesn't continue, to make sure they can have an access to abortion, to make sure that the LGBTQ community gets the protections which they want and that they need to make sure that racism is fought in all of its forms all across the country. Young people in the campuses of Pennsylvania are going to rise up. They're going to make sure that we get the vote out this year in 2024. And thank you, Maya Angelou, because we should believe Donald Trump when he tells us what he is going to do. And we have an answer for Project 2025. We call it Project 2024 to get Kamala Harris elected as the President of the United States. They're not going to back down. We're not going to back down. That's who we are as Democrats, but we can't achieve all of these goals unless we take back the House, keep Bob Casey in the Senate, in order to make sure that ultimately Kamala Harris and Tim Walz can get their agenda passed. We are not going to go back. We have a coalition, black and white, rural and urban, young and old, and we cannot agonize. We have to organize for the final 31 days. Pennsylvania is going to decide who the next president of the United States is. It's going to happen right here. The 19 electoral college votes of Pennsylvania is going to decide not just the United States, but the rest of the planet for the next 4 years. Door to door, person to person, phone call by phone call, issue by issue, organizer by organizer. So I'm here to ask every single person tonight here in Pennsylvania, will you stand with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and the Democratic Party for opportunity, for justice, for democracy? Will you stand with Kamala Harris in support of our workers and unions and their right to organize, collectively bargain, and retire with security? Thank you, longshoremen. Thank you, UAW. Thank you, Teamsters. Thank all of you. Will you stand with Kamala Harris to hold corporations accountable for price gouging and to stop them from paying nothing in taxes? 18 corporations paid no federal taxes over the last 5 years, but paid their executives $5 billion. Will you stand with Kamala Harris for criminal justice reform? We owe an apology to an entire generation of African-American young men who were incarcerated as a part of the failed war on drugs. Will you stand with Kamala Harris to pass universal background checks, ban assault weapons, and make NRA stand for not relevant anymore in American politics? Will you stand with Kamala Harris against an illegitimate Supreme Court? Justice Alito should recuse himself. Justice Clarence Thomas should resign, and we need to reform the Supreme Court and take back the stolen seats. Will you stand with Kamala Harris and defend abortion rights and reproductive freedom? We must make Roe versus Wade the law of the land once again in our country. This election is going to be decided here in Pennsylvania. That's why I've come here, because I'm going to come back as many times as I need to give you the help which you need to make sure that Kamala Harris is the next president, is the next leader of the free world. So let's do it. We have 31 days. Bob Casey in the Senate, Dee Pasquale for Attorney General, and Kamala Harris and Tim Walz for President of the United States. Thank you all, Pennsylvania, for what you're going to do to preserve democracy for our country. Thank you all.
Wow, those senators from from places that are called Commonwealths can really light it up. Senator Markey, thank you for the work you're doing, and we won't let you down here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You know, as Senator Markey talked about all the rights that need to be protected, and he talked about so many of the things that needed. We here are not only voting in national elections, but we're voting for who will protect our constitutional freedoms here in the Commonwealth. You know, it was Kamala Harris as an attorney general that stood up to the opioid companies and made sure that those companies that were producing hundreds of millions of doses of fentanyl, that they were having doctors overprescribed, that they were pumping into our communities that really caused the opioid epidemic. American billionaires, she stood up to them and didn't scapegoat immigrants. And she did that working with attorney generals across the country, including Josh Shapiro when he was attorney general. It was Kamala Harris who had, as an attorney general, began to look at keeping communities safe and realized we could keep communities safe while we were treated people fairly and talked about criminal justice reform. Our next speaker is a man who will do that as Attorney General. As Auditor General, he looked to examine whether our school funding was being fairly distributed and whether our school, and as Attorney General, he will enforce the Commonwealth Court decision that said that a thorough and efficient education that our Commonwealth requires that education be equally funded. As Auditor General, he did an audit to make sure that we were upholding our state constitutional right to clean air and clean water. And as Attorney General, he will enforce those rights to make sure that we protect our environment. As Auditor General, he examined our system to make sure that our economics were being fairly distributed across the Commonwealth. And as Attorney General, he will fight discrimination to make sure that no matter who you love, where you come from, what the color of your skin is, you are treated fairly in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And as a state legislator, he always voted to protect a woman's right to choose. And as Attorney General, he will make sure that the women of Pennsylvania's right to choose is protected, and that women who come from our neighboring states to get an abortion are protected as well. I present to some and introduce to others the next Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, my friend, Eugene D. Pasquale.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for your great remarks. Thank you, everyone, for being here and being a part of this important election cycle where we're only about to save our republic. That's all. No pressure. I want to give two specific shout outs. Aaron McClellan, who's our candidate for treasurer, Malcolm Kenyatta, obviously our candidate for Auditor General. They're holding down the fort in Pittsburgh at an event with the first gentleman, Doug Emhoff. So I'm here tonight holding down the fort for them. So I wanted to give you a special shout out. Them a special shout out is why they're not here. Please give them a round of applause. Now, it has been an interesting summer for me. I know we're in fall now. It's an interesting summer. See, I had this guy named Jeff Yass, who's worth about $50 billion, who decided to write my opponent about a $12 million check. So I had ads on, more ads against me than any candidate for Attorney General in Pennsylvania history. And I was basically hunkered in my basement making phone calls. Well, after all that spending, and we've now been on the air for about 3-4 weeks, we have a 3-point lead. So we have pushed back on all that spending. Now we're going to win this thing. And I'm doing that with the help of you, organized labor, political leaders, average everyday folk. We've had 4,000 people donate to my campaign as opposed to one guy. The vast majority of that in Pennsylvania because they like what I am going to do. I've talked about my investigation. It found over 3,000 untested rape kits. Removing that backlog, getting violent rapists off the street, and bringing justice to victims. My investigation had found 58,000 unanswered phone calls at the child abuse hotline. Any single one of those calls could have been life or death for a child. But that my team and I went to every single county in this state to make sure our children were better protected. And also my investigation into big pharma and pharmacy benefit managers that showed how they were gouging the consumers of Pennsylvania, driving up our prescription drug prices. I helped fight to expose that, and then legislators across Pennsylvania, along with the governor, passed a law to hold them accountable to bring our prescription costs down. That's what I've brought to you in my leadership role as Pennsylvania's top investigator. But I also will bring values into the office. Talked about trying to become, if I win, the first child of a convicted felon ever in Pennsylvania history of being elected Attorney General. My dad was wounded in Vietnam, shot twice in the right leg, once in the left. He was prescribed synthetic heroin that led to an over 30-year battle with addiction, eventually him dealing in a 10.5-year federal prison sentence. I know from firsthand experience The war on drugs is the most failed war in the history of the United States. And as your Attorney General, I will turn it into a battle against addiction. I also know what it's like to struggle. Now, I had two younger brothers. Vincent was a year younger than me. Anthony was 7 years younger. Anthony had muscular dystrophy. Because of that, we were never able to have health insurance. Now, my brother and I were good enough to play sports in high school and college, so we just carried him everywhere. And for those of you that are, maybe a little bit older, you know the song from the Hollies, "He ain't heavy, he's my brother." That's what we lived by. But I didn't know what it meant to not have health insurance until I was putting myself through night law school, and he passed away from complications from muscular dystrophy as a sophomore at the University of Pittsburgh. We had to take out loans to pay for the funeral, and my dad came to that funeral in shackles. I know what these big corporations are trying to do to average everyday Pennsylvanians. I know what these big insurance companies are capable of doing. I will pledge to you that I will be your lawyer, the people's lawyer, fighting against corporate greed every single day. And perhaps the biggest difference between my opponent and me. Now, we had a debate last night, and some of you think I did okay. But we were asked a question halfway through. And the question was this: if Pennsylvania passed an abortion law that banned it, what would you do as the state's top prosecutor? I went first. I looked right in the camera and said, I will never prosecute a woman for having an abortion. I will never prosecute a doctor for performing an abortion. If you want an attorney general that will do that, you're going to have to find another one, because it's not going to be me. Because our family had a personal experience with this. Some of you know my son Ben, he's 24, daughter Sarah, 21. She's my favorite Swiftie, senior at Temple. Ben's doing great at Georgetown grad school. But before we had our oldest, we had an ectopic pregnancy at week 10. The decision that night that saved Tracy's life and gave us the ability to have two wonderful kids would now put you in jail in the states of Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Idaho, and Utah. I'm telling this last night. I will protect abortion rights not only for the women of Pennsylvania, but for any woman fleeing one of those right-wing states that comes here. I'll protect it for them as well. My opponent ended his answer with this: of course, I would enforce the law. That's what's at stake with these people. He would jail women. He would go along with Trump's election denialism. He will not protect the environment. He will not protect workers. He even crossed the picket line to do a Pittsburgh Post-Gazette interview. That's what we are dealing with if Dave Sunday is your attorney general. But with your help, that's not going to happen. I don't have Jeff Yass. I have you. And with you, we're going to win this election. We're going to preserve our democracy. We're going to protect voting rights. We're going to protect a woman's right to choose. And then we're going to make sure throughout my term in office, we have fair funding in our schools. We take on these crooks trying to scam our seniors every single day. We protect our kids in our schools from the bullies that are trying to bully them every single day. We tackle climate change like it's the crisis it is. And I do something that we need to do in the Attorney General's office. I need to be your lawyer. Thank you very much.
Our next Attorney General, Eugene DePasquale. You know, Pennsylvania, when Vice Chair Grove and I ran, we committed that this was going to be a 67 county strategy. And we were going to be working in every part of the state. That means we were going to be running candidates all over the state. We were going to be talking to people, not just in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, or here in the great Montgomery County. We were going to be talking to people everywhere. Now, our next speaker is a guy who's running in our Pennsylvania's 15th congressional district. He's a guy who's a young guy who comes from a coal mining family. He understands that a lot of the work and the values of Democrats to make sure that ordinary people can get a fair shake isn't just something for ordinary people that live in cities and suburbs. He understands that there are working people in places like him where underserved communities that the Affordable Care Act protected, those are a lot of rural Pennsylvanians. That there are plenty of people that need the benefits that we're protecting, and that the water that people drink in rural Pennsylvania is the water most likely to be polluted and not protected by Republicans. He understands that, guess what, Republicans have been tricking, lying, and bamboozling rural Pennsylvanians. And he's a guy who's committed to setting the record straight. And guess what? He's a young guy. He's about the age of most of my children. That's the truth. But you know what? The younger generation understands that we have more in common than we have apart. I'm proud to introduce a guy who's fighting in PA's 15, a guy who's taking the message to rural Pennsylvania, a guy who's making sure that we are heard and that we're in this generation in every part of the Commonwealth. Our next congressman in the PA 15, Zach Wormer. Come on.
I know what you're all thinking. Who put this hillbilly up here? That was actually Mitch, so you can blame him. But I want to tell you about myself and why I'm a Democrat and why I'm running for this congressional district. Now, 7 years ago, I wasn't in a great spot. I was sleeping in my truck, I was working construction during the day, and I was delivering pizzas at night. In the 7 years since then, I was the first person to graduate from college from my family. I got a full ride from Pennsylvania State Law School, and now I'm running for the United States Congress. I am actually the youngest person in the entire country that is running for Congress this year. I'm 25 years old. And now I think I know what you're thinking again. Why would someone who's 25 run for Congress? And let me tell you. So I grew up in Center County. I'm from Phillipsburg. It's a coal mining town. I grew up in a home that had standing water in the basement and mold covering the walls. I grew up with an alcoholic father and an abusive mother. And statistically, I shouldn't be standing on the stage. I should still be sleeping in my truck. And there's a lot of people who grow up like me. In fact, according to his memoir, there's someone who grew up like me who's running for vice president. His name is J.D. Vance. And I can't tell you, I actually hate Vance more than Trump. And the reason why is Trump's, yeah, sure. I can't blame Trump too much because he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. But when you're from someplace like me and you become a class traitor, that's when I get really angry. You see, as I grew up and I started achieving things similar to Senator Vance, I went to college, I went to law school, I saw what was in front of me. There's a fork in the road. You can use the privileges you have, and you can make a boatload of money, and you can spend your entire life living for yourself. Or you can take a different path. You can use your skills and talents to help the people who weren't as fortunate as you. The people that you know feel the same pain you did, and you can make it better for them. That's the choice I made. I could make a boatload of money as an attorney, but I'm not interested in that. That's because, unlike the folks on the other side, I actually do read the Bible, and actually do know that a camel will not fit through the eye of the needle, and I know that rich men are not going to heaven. And I'll tell you what, because I'm 25, because I live in Phillipsburg, statistically, I should be a Republican. That is the group that is most likely to be Republican in this country, young men living in rural areas. But the reason I'm not is because when I decided to get involved in politics, I didn't look at what people were saying. I looked back at the legislative record. I looked back at who gave black lung benefits to my great-grandfather. I looked back at who passed Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security Acts. I looked back at who passed the Civil Rights Act and said, we shall overcome in the United States Senate. And in all that searching, I tried to be unbiased, try to look at what the Republicans did. And what did the Republican-led Congress do in my lifetime? They passed the North American Free Trade Agreement that sent thousands of jobs out of central Pennsylvania. They added China to the WTO, which sent thousands more. And then they repealed the Glass-Steagall Act, causing the Great Recession in 2008, which led my father to be unemployed for 2 years. I know what it means to be a Republican. I know what it means to be a Democrat. And I'll tell you, as someone from coal country, the Republicans are company men. Does anyone know what a company man is? It's someone who works for the company, helps the company, does everything they possibly can, and they're cowards. It takes a lot of guts to be a union man. It takes a lot of guts to be for the miner. And that's what I think Democrat is all about. It's about helping people that deserve to be helped, not giving corporate giveaways to these big back people, you know? I'm running a really rough district. It's a very Republican district. But let me tell you something. I meet more Republicans than probably most of you. And they, at the voter level, share the same values we do. You'd be surprised. They don't like corporations. They don't like all the nonsense that goes on, but they actually believe in that guy over there. They, for some reason, even though they live in rural central Pennsylvania, believe a billionaire from New York is going to solve their problems. But I'm going to tell you something. He's not going to solve your problems. There's actually a hospital in my district. It's in Elk County. They closed down maternity care this year. 156,000 people without maternity care. There have now been 2 children born in an ambulance in my district this year. I can't tell you how rare that is. And the only person that's really actually trying to address this issue is Senator Bob Casey. Not the Republicans, not Donald Trump, Senator Bob Casey. And I think if we could actually take this to these people, to tell these Republicans in rural areas, look at the legislative record, look what Democrats have done, I think we can win them back. Central Pennsylvania, when I grew up, we didn't have Republican legislators in Center County. We had Dan Sura. We had Bud George. We had Mike Hanna. We used to be blue out in central Pennsylvania. And we can be blue again if we take this message to them. We let them know we are for you. Thank you so much.
That's how we take back our country. With people like that, this young man is going to be part of how we take back our country. We take back our Commonwealth by telling the truth and not forgetting about anybody. That's what Pennsylvania Democrats are doing. Now, you know, when I got elected to the Pennsylvania Senate, I was the only non-incumbent Democrat to win in 2016, and we were down 16 to 34 in the state Senate. And we were down almost 30 seats in the state House. When I ran for state chair, I said, we're going to flip the House. And a lot of folks said, well, Sharif, if we get close, that would be good. But what did we do in 2022? We flipped the House. And Democrats now have elected the first woman to be Speaker of the House. So we're bringing up some young speakers. Our next speaker is a young man who's been traveling, who serves with me in the Senate. Well, we're now just 3 seats away from flipping the state Senate. The reality is that we can do it. And this guy comes from the swingiest county in the swingiest state in the country, representing the Lehigh Valley. He's been traveling around the state, and with his help and his work, he's going to talk to us about how Democrats, we're not just going to have a Democratic governor. We're not just going to have 2 Democratic U.S. senators. We're not just going to have a majority of our congressional district be Democrats, things all of which nobody thought we would have. But for the first time, and probably longer than most of us can remember, and probably for the first time in any of our lives, we're going to have a Democrat-led House, a Democratic-led Senate, with a Democratic governor, and the 399 bills that are looking to die in the Senate are going to pass. So I'm going to bring up the guy who has been working hard. He's the youngest Democrat in the Pennsylvania Senate, but probably one of the hardest working colleagues I have, Senator Nick Miller, to represent the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee.
Appreciate it. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Senator Street. So, loving the energy in the room tonight, and we need it. We truly do need it. We've got an opportunity to deliver. Democrats deliver. And think about what we just did with the House majority this past budget, whether it's investing in education. You know, we invested $500 million into our poorest school districts for the first time historically, a huge win for Democrats. Democrats deliver. We invested in gun violence prevention. We invested in community safety, all kinds of really good democratic issues that we can't do on a consistent basis without a majority in the Senate. And so, first of all, I want to say thank you to our chairman, Senator Street, for being a leader and putting together the infrastructure needed to win Pennsylvania up and down the ballot. Secondly, we truly can deliver a majority in the Senate. We've got our Erie folks are here, our Allegheny folks are here, our Philadelphia, our Dauphin County. We've got some crucial races. It's real, folks. It's real. We work on it every day. I wake up every day. I'm like, how do we get to the majority in the Senate? Because the House is having all the fun over there, sending all the good bills, working on good democratic issues, and delivering with our governor. And here in the Senate, we're down by 3. So we have an opportunity, and really want to thank your energy and your focus and volunteering and giving your time to coming out tonight, but also to help our candidates and our inspirational candidates we've heard from already tonight. We really have an opportunity. We've got 31 days. I want to thank you again for having me. We really got to, let's make this work. Let's make this happen. Democrats deliver. Thank you very much.
Hey, folks, so look, we've had a great program. We're not going to belabor it because, you know, we got another dinner tomorrow night. This is our big weekend. But listen, we're going to hear from one of our county chairs and our host county chair to close us out for tonight. Where is Jason Salas? Is he in the room? Jason Salas is the treasurer here in Montgomery. Jason Salas is also the county chair of the 3rd largest county in the state. Now, look, when we talk about winning these races, you know, party chairs at the state level, at the national level, people pay attention to us. But at the end of the day, the people who call us to make sure that you have lawn signs, and I know I've got cussed out by with a lot of lawn signs. Mitch, we got to make sure we have more lawn signs. When we're talking about the canvas launches, when we talk about how many people are going to knock on doors, when the people who are organizing our neighbors are the county chairs, and there's no place that has been the greatest success story in recent history of going from a red county to a blue county, a county that we forget that it wasn't that long ago, Montgomery County was a Republican county. Now it is one of the strongest Democratic counties in this Commonwealth and probably in the United States of America. I want to present to some and introduce to others the man in whose county we stand, the leader of the Montgomery County Democrats, Jason Salas. Come on up here, Jason.
Good evening, Pennsylvania Democrats. Thank you, Chairman Street, for your leadership and for bringing us back here to Montgomery County this year. I am so proud of the work that we've done here in Montgomery County, being in the vanguard of the suburban counties flipping from red to blue. In 2022, we had the highest Democratic turnout in Pennsylvania, and we saw the results electing John Fetterman and Josh Shapiro. I am incredibly proud of the result of the leaders that we've delivered. We flipped the state House seat. We nicknamed Representative Melissa Serrato 102. I know there's a lot of 102s out there. But that led to the election of Speaker Joanna McClinton and, of course, Montgomery County's own Majority Leader Matt Bradford. And at the same time, we elected Governor Josh Shapiro. You can clap for them. But as Senator Street said, it wasn't always this easy in Montgomery County. I know I don't look that old, but I'm old enough to remember when Montgomery County wasn't always as Democratic. In fact, in 1990, there was another Bob Casey on the ballot. There was one county in Pennsylvania that he lost. One county that went Republican. It was Montgomery County. We were more than 2-1 Republican at the time. So I know two things. One, the work that it takes to build and grow, and the work that we're doing now to get up the vote. And I also know that whether you're a solidly blue county like Montgomery County or Philadelphia or Allegheny, or a purple or red county, a vote coming out of a red county or a purple county counts just as much for Bob Casey and Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as it does coming out of Montgomery County. We are all in this together. In 2020, Pennsylvania saved democracy, and we're going to do it again this year. Are you with me? Very good. Thank you, Pennsylvania Democrats.
All right, folks. Now we have this item up here. We doing this auction for this item now, Madam Vice Chair, or are we doing it later? Madam Vice Chair Peggy Grove, are we going to auction this off now, or are we going to do it later? I'm talking to you, Peggy. Are we doing it now? Are we doing it now? Or are we doing it later? Come on up here, Peggy Grove. Let's tell us about what we have right here. Come on up. Join me. You don't know anything about Peggy Gukas? Okay, Peggy Gukas, our office manager. Peggy Gukas, come on up, Peggy. You know, every year we always have a surprise where somebody gives us something that we can auction off to raise a couple extra dollars. And Peggy Gukas said, you know, we have the Pennsylvania Dems wouldn't be anything without our Peggies. Peggy Grove and Peggy Gukas. So Peggy, come on, bring this up and tell us what we have here.
Okay, this, my friends, is donated by Dana, who is Ed Toss's wife. Ed Toss is Huntington County Chair. Isn't that beautiful? So, Sharif, hold it up.
So it's called a GOTUS for POTUS. All right, and we're going to start the auctioning off at $100. Do I hear $100? Do I hear $100? Do I hear $100? Do I hear $100? $100 for our treasurer, Scott Conklin. Scott Conklin, Representative Conklin's been $100. Do I hear $150? $150? $150? $150? I see $150 for Micah Majubian, my chief of staff. Mike has been $150. We hear 100. Okay, you going to beat him? Come on, Scott. You going to let Mike outbid you? Come on, $200 for $200 from Scott Conklin. Do I hear $250? Do I hear $250? Do I hear $250? Do I hear $250? Oh my goodness, my wife April bid $250. Do I hear $300? $300? Do I hear $300? $300 for Micah Majubian. Do I hear $350? $350? $350? Scott, you gonna let Micah beat you? All right, going once, going twice, going three times. Sold to Micah Majubian for $350. All right, folks, listen, we're going to have some fun tonight. I hear there is a party with superheroes.
Listen, McKenna Long made this. It's not a tutu.
There's more.
It is to put on paper towels. To put on a paper
A tutu for paper towels.
yes.
All right. If my dad were here, he would buy this. We should have had this tomorrow because Mayor Street would definitely buy this. But my dad's not here. All right. We have the tutu for paper towels. Do I hear tutu for paper towels? Marty Allman bids $100 for tutu paper towels. Okay. We got $125 here from our chair, Westwood County. $150 for Peggy Grove. Do I hear $200? $200 here from the chair. But Peggy, you gonna let her beat you? All right. Listen, going once, going twice, going three times. Sold for $200 for the gentlelady. Come on up, chairwoman. Yeah, get your tutu for paper towels. Thank you. Listen, folks, we're gonna have some fun tonight. This is concluding our formal dinner, but tonight I think that the Black Caucus and the Rural Caucus are having some kind of party where they're supposed to be like a Halloween party with like a grease theme. I don't know. It should be interesting. I hear Mitch Cates may put on a Batman costume, so we know you got to show up to see Mitch in the Batman costume. Listen, thank you all. But since we open with prayer, we'll close with prayer, and I'm going to just go ahead and do the prayer. So if you'll bow your heads with us. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for allowing us to have a great dinner. Thank you for watching over us. Strengthen us as we knock on doors. Strengthen us as we reach out to our communities. Make us do it in a joyful spirit as we talk to our neighbors and our friends. Watch over us as we go through our night. Let us have fun, but not too much fun because we got to get up early in the morning. Dear God, thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.